Welcome to Amazing Dinosaurs. I'm Dave, and this is a collection of 100 Jurassic World predators and other figures. I've got figures from Dino Trackers, from Fallen Kingdom, from Camp Cretaceous, and a whole lot more. The first dinosaur is this massive Indominus Rex predator from the new Dino Trackers series. It has a button on the tail to activate the sound effects and chomping. And check out that green lighting in its neck too. Next up is another massive predator. This is the Spinosaurus. And this one is actually pretty special because it is in the battle damage edition. And you can see the battle damage right here on the side that you can open right up and press a button to spin around. Way in the back here, this predator is another Indominus Rex, and this one is the Extreme Battle Damage edition. Check that out. You can turn on and off the battle damage with the sound effects, and you can press the button on its tail for the chomping action. Next up, I've got a Giganotosaurus figure. This figure is almost as large as the Indominus Rex figures, and it has a button on its back to swing the torso around, as well as chomp its jaw open and shut. Next up is the new 93 Real Feel Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. It has the all red body, and it actually has a stomach compartment, so you can feed it smaller dinosaurs. Way in the back here is a custom painted Indominus Rex. It's been changed to be camouflage green, and they added a bunch of blood around its jaw. Here is the Dino Trackers Tyrannosaurus Rex figure with the headpiece, and it has one button on its back for the chomping action. Next up is another Indominus Rex figure, but this one is actually a hybrid one from the first Jurassic World movie. It's got some hidden spikes that you can pop up, and it's even battery operated for some jaw-chomping action. This predator is the Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. It features an extremely posable body and amazing detailing and coloring. Here is another battle damaged dinosaur. This one is the T-Rex edition, and right on its side, just like the Indominus Rex, it has the battle damage that you can turn on and off. Next up is this huge Triceratops figure. This is a whole lot larger than my other Triceratops, and it comes in the classic brown coloring. Next up is the Grab and Growl Endoraptor figure from Fallen Kingdom. It has an action button for slashing its arms and for chomping its jaw. This is the Scorpius Rex figure from Camp Cretaceous. It has a dark green body and is fairly posable. You can move the arms, the legs, and the tail and manually open and close the mouth. Here is the Pyroraptor figure from Jurassic World Dominion. This is the basic edition, so you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail, but you can't open and close the jaw. Here is a crazy looking Dilophosaurus figure from the first Jurassic World movie. It's got neon colors all over and a bit of battle damage right on the side. This next figure is the Sound Surge Tyrannosaurus Rex figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It's a lot smaller in size, and there's a button on its back for the sound effects. Now here's one massive predator figure. This is the Allosaurus in the Battle Damage edition. So just like the Spinosaurus we saw earlier, it has battle damage right on the side. This dinosaur, I believe, is called the Kentrosaurus. It looks a lot like a Stegosaurus, and it has these massive spikes right on its side, and there's an action button on its back to flip those spikes back and forth. Here is a Carcharodontosaurus figure in the blue, brown, and orange edition, and it has a single action button on its back for a chomping motion. Up next from the new Dino Tracker series is the Sinotyrannus figure. It's got this cool headpiece that goes all the way down to its back, and it has two action buttons, one for chomping the jaw and one for swinging the tail. Here is a Cryolophosaurus figure, I believe from Camp Cretaceous. It is in the dark blue version, and on this figure you can move the tail around to move the head with sound effects. This is another big predator figure. This is a Carnotaurus figure. This one's a bit older. It has the bright orange and red coloring and the button on its tail for chomping its jaw. And here is a newer Carnotaurus figure. This one is from Dino Trackers. You can see it still has very similar coloring, but this version actually has some buttons on its side for sound effects and lighting. Plus there is a chomping action button as well. This figure is the Stegosaurus figure in the dark blue-gray coloring, and it has a single action button on its back for swinging the tail back and forth. Oh, you know what? It looks like I've actually got two versions of this same figure. So these are twin dinosaurs right here. Up next is another Endoraptor figure, I believe also from Fallen Kingdom. This figure features a fully posable body, but no action buttons. Next is an Iguanodon figure from Jurassic World Dominion, and it features an action button when you press down on its back. This brightly colored dinosaur, I believe, is called a Spinosaurus. Check out those huge horns right underneath its chin. Here's another Indominus Rex figure. This one is from the first Jurassic World movie, and it features the battle damage right on the side that you can hide and reveal. Plus, it's got an attack action when you press down on the tail. This next figure is a baby Stegosaurus figure. This one came out pretty recently. I really love the green coloring on this. And I've got another baby dinosaur in here. This one is the juvenile Nasutoceratops figure. And for the final figure in this first bin is a mini figure in the bright green coloring with spikes all over its back. Now it's time for the second bin, but before we do, let's check out this brand new Camp Cretaceous figure, the Gallimimus from the Fierce Force series. So it's a pretty small figure, probably around the same size as my other Gallimimus figures. Got some pretty cool camo coloring with the green on the sides and the brown on the top, and it looks like there's a single action button for moving its head up and down. Now let's check out this massive predator, the Mosasaurus. This is obviously an aquatic dinosaur, and it is a super long figure. Over here I've got another Spinosaurus figure. This is the Legacy Collection version, so it has the dark green coloring with the red spine, and of course the jaw-chomping button on the top of its head. Here's another predator, and this figure's pretty old, once again from the first Jurassic World movie. This is another Indominus Rex, and this figure has some real feel skin, so its head and its neck are a soft rubber, and there's an action that when you press down on its arm, it actually opens up its mouth. Next up is another battle damage T-Rex, but this one does not have the battle damage right here on the side. Instead, it has it painted on its neck, on its chin, and other parts of its body as well. And here's another Carnotaurus figure, but this is the Sound Surge edition, so it's a whole lot smaller, and it has a single button on its back for the sound effects. Check out this new Endoraptor figure from the Dino Tracker series. It has a chomping action when you move its arms, and another chomping action when you press down on its back. This figure is from Camp Cretaceous, I believe. This is the Scorpius Rex figure. It has the yellow underbelly and the black sides, and it's got two action buttons, one to operate its jaw, and another to operate its arms. Here is the new Legacy Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. I bought this one quite recently. It's got some really cool green coloring with the gray and yellow on top, and the button on the top of its head for chomping. Next up is the Hammond Collection Metriacanthosaurus figure. It's got some really cool coloring and some orange on its nose, and like all Hammond Collection figures, features a fully posable body. This predator figure is an Atrociraptor from Jurassic World Dominion. It is the basic series, so you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail, but you can't open or close its mouth. Check it out, here's another Mosasaurus figure, but this one's a whole lot smaller, and it's from the first movie. It's even got some battle damage right there on the side that you can open and close. And this gigantic figure is the Stegosaurus from the Dino Tracker series. It has this huge backpack and two action buttons. The first swings its tail up and down, and the second on the other side swings its tail side to side. Next up, this crazy looking predator is called the Ichthyovenator. It's got some bright green coloring on its body and a single attack action for chomping its jaw. Here is a Ceratosaurus figure in the dark green and black coloring, and it's got an action button on its back for jaw chomping. And here's another Ceratosaurus figure. This one's a bit older. I think it might be from the Fallen Kingdom collection. It's got totally different coloring and a single button on its back for jaw chomping. This figure is an Allosaurus figure. It's got the bright blue, dark blue, and tan coloring, and two action buttons on its back, one for chomping the jaw and one for moving its arms. This figure is the Ankylosaurus figure in the clay red, brown, and tan coloring, and it has a single attack feature. When you press down on its body, it swings its tail back and forth. Here is the Albertosaurus figure in the green coloring with the battle damage on the side that you can open and close. This big figure is the Therizinosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It features a tail that can move the torso around and a button for jaw chomping. Here is the Metriacanthosaurus figure in the yellow and green coloring, and it has a single action button on its back for chomping its jaw. I've got a Velociraptor figure here. This is from the first Jurassic World movie, so you can actually only move its arms and its legs. Its mouth is stuck open. Here is the Hammond Collection Triceratops figure. It's in the classic brown coloring, and just like the other Hammond Collection figures, is super posable and quite detailed. Here is another Scorpius Rex figure. This is the basic edition, so you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail, but you can't open and close the jaw, and it's quite a narrow dinosaur. Look how thin that is. Here is the Dinosaurs figure from the Dino Tracker series, and it features an attack button on its back for chomping. I've got another Allosaurus figure in here with the tan and blue coloring and the single action button on its back for the chomping and sound effects. Up next is a smaller Carnotaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It features the dark green and orange coloring, and you can tell it's missing a horn, just like in the movie. This figure is the Ceratosaurus figure from Camp Cretaceous, and it's got the action button on its back for the roaring and sound effects. From the Dino Tracker series is this new Diabloceratops figure in the bright red coloring, and it has the action button on its back for sound effects and moving its head. Here's a similar looking dinosaur. This is a Triceratops figure in the green and brown coloring, and it's got two actions on its back, one for moving its head and the other for moving its tail. Here is the Eocarcharia figure from the Dino Tracker series. It's got feather texturing all over its body and a single action button on its back for the sound effects. Next up is a Baryonyx figure in the bright green coloring, and it has that same action button on its back for the chomping action. This crazy looking dinosaur is called the Irritator. It's got tons of different colors on its body and the action button on its back to move its head around with sound effects. And here is yet another Indoraptor figure. This one is the basic edition, so you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail, and it still has that really awesome coloring. This is the Hammond Collection Concavinator figure with the blue, the bright orange, and a little bit of brown coloring. Also from the Hammond Collection is this Irritator figure. It is in the gray and yellow coloring, and it has some really awesome detailing all over its whole body. And I've got another Triceratops figure. This one is from Jurassic World Dominion, and when you press down on its back, you get a roaring action. This is the Baryonyx Grim figure with the tan, bright green, and dark green coloring. And with this figure, you can use the tail to control the head. Here's another Hammond Collection figure. This one is the Ankylosaurus figure. So it is super posable just like the others, and it's quite a bit larger compared to my other Ankylosaurus figures. Next up, this crazy looking dinosaur is called the Sarcosuchus. And with this figure, you can use the tail to control the head and chomp the jaw. Next, from the Amber Collection, this predator is the Velociraptor. It comes in the brown with darker brown striping and is super posable. Here is the Sound Surge Giganotosaurus figure. It's a whole lot smaller compared to the Giganotosaurus that I showed you earlier, and let's check out those sound effects. This is a basic Velociraptor figure in the orange coloring. Check out those bright yellow eyes. Next up is a pretty wild looking figure. This is a Dilophosaurus figure, and when you press down on the tail, you get a chomping action. And here we've got another Dilophosaurus figure, but this one actually has the frills that you can pull out to the front. Here is another Velociraptor figure from the first Jurassic World movie. So you can adjust its legs and its arms, but you can't control its mouth or its tail. And here's our first winged dinosaur of this collection. This is a gigantic Pteranodon figure in the red and blue coloring. Next up is this Allosaurus figure in the dark green, white, and red coloring, and it has the action button on its back for the chomping and sound effects. This figure is the Regaloceratops from the new Dino Tracker series. It's got a bright yellow body and an action button on its back for moving its head with sound effects. Here is a Pyroraptor figure from the Gujitsu series. This figure is super stretchy, and if you look close inside, you can see that there's actually feathers inside of the goo. This is a hybrid T-Rex Dilophosaurus figure from the first Jurassic World movie. It's super bright with this orange and the shiny gold on top, and it's even got some battle damage on the side. Also from the first Jurassic World movie is this miniature Spinosaurus figure. It also has the battle damage on the side, and you can control the head by moving the tail. Here is a smaller Velociraptor figure in the yellow and brown coloring. And check it out, it's got the battle damage right on the side that you can open and close. Here is a Herrerasaurus figure in the green and brown coloring. And check that out, it also has the battle damage right there on the side. Look at this, I've got the Velociraptor Beta figure, and it even has a little dial on its back so that you can open and close its mouth. Here is an Allosaurus figure from the first Jurassic World movie. It's got the bright yellow and red on its body, and you can use the tail to control the head. I've got another winged dinosaur here. This one is a Dimorphodon figure in the bright red with some orange and yellow on its wings. Here's another Dilophosaurus figure. This one is mostly purple, but it has tons of yellow, orange, and red on its frills. And check this out, here's a bunch more Velociraptor figures. This first one is green and brown, and it has some green specks on its side, which is pretty cool. Here is a miniature Hammond Collection Velociraptor, so this figure is super posable. There's also this classic brown Velociraptor figure with the reflective green eyes. And then I've got two Velociraptor blue figures in here. This first one is a classic one without any special features, but this one right here is actually spring-loaded in the legs, so it'll actually jump up into the air when you press down on it. Oh, looks like I missed a few other raptor figures. I've got a sneaking green Velociraptor figure here, and I've got a white with brown stripes, a Trosiraptor figure. Here is a Monolothosaurus from Camp Cretaceous in the dark green, yellow, and red coloring. There's this Stygimoloch figure in the red-orange coloring with the striping on the sides, and with an attack that when you press down on its tail, it activates the headbutting action. Here is another Gallimimus figure, but this one is in a tan coloring and it has some striping along the top. Next, there's this smaller dinosaur that I actually can't remember the name of this species, but it has some pretty cool red and blue coloring. Next is another winged dinosaur. This is another Pteranodon figure. It's mostly gray, but it looks like it has some purple detailing on its face and on its feet. And there's a single action button on its back for flapping the wings. And there's this weird looking little dinosaur. I think it might be an Atrociraptor. You can actually turn it on so it's battery operated, and then it'll move around. And it's got some sound effects too. Next up in this collection are a few Snap Squad figures. I believe this first one here is a T-Rex figure. I've also got the Dilophosaurus figure in this collection. And then finally, an older Carnotaurus figure. And for the final four, I've got a bunch of super miniature figures. I've got Velociraptor Blue in a super tiny figure. There's also this Endoraptor figure in the crawling pose. And here is a Stegosaurus figure with the brown and green coloring. And finally, but certainly not least, a miniature Mosasaurus figure. Let's get started with this giant Spinosaurus figure. This specific figure is actually from the Legacy collection, and they don't make this one anymore, so it's pretty hard to find. It's got the dark green coloring, different than all the other Spinosaurus figures, and of course the jaw-chomping button. Next, we've got a big Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. I believe this one is from Camp Cretaceous. It's got a light brown body, its arms, its legs, its tail, and its head are adjustable, and there's a button for chomping. Next up, we've got another T-Rex figure. This one's pretty similar to the one that we just saw, except it's got some slightly darker coloring, darker brown on the top, and of course the jaw-chomping button. Over here is an herbivore dinosaur. This is the Pentaceratops. It's got a huge variety of horns on its head and on its frill as well. And it's got two action buttons, one to move the head up and down, and one to swing the torso back and forth. Moving right along here, we've got the Sound Surge Carnotaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. Let's check out these sound effects. Up next is a figure that I bought pretty recently, actually. This is the Hammond Collection Concavinator. Check out that really cool coloring with the orange fading into the brown and the blue, and the orange and red stripes along the top. Up in front here, we've got another giant T-Rex figure. This one is a bright orange color, and it has the same movements and actions as the T-Rexes that we saw earlier. This is an Indominus Rex figure, but it's actually not made by Hasbro. It's made by a model company, so it looks a lot different, and it has a lot more detail than many of the Hasbro figures. I love those little spikes running along its back and on the top of its head. Right next to that, we've got a weird looking dinosaur. This is the Sarcosuchus. It's got a super short and super long body. It's got some really cool spikes that run all the way down its back to its tail. And you can use the tail to control the head and chomp the jaw too. This next one is an Ouranosaurus from Hasbro. I believe this is an herbivore dinosaur. Definitely doesn't look like a scary predator, and it's got some cool coloring on its body. Plus, an action button right on the side to move its head up and down. I've got a super bright dinosaur in here. This is a Triceratops. It looks a lot less realistic than many of my other figures, but it's still pretty cool. It's got some red on the top and the blue. Kind of looks like a baby Triceratops. Way in the back here, we've got another Indominus Rex figure, but this one looks quite a bit different. It's got really short legs and a giant head. This is from the Rowdy Roars collection, and it actually has a few different actions. You can get it to shut its mouth, and you can use the tail to hold the head up. Way in the back here, we've got a Cryolophosaurus figure with the dark blue and orange coloring. And this figure comes with sound effects that happen when you move its tail around. Up next, let's go with this Ceratosaurus figure in the dark green and black coloring. And it's got a slide lever action at the top of its head for chomping and roaring. This right here is the Jurassic World Dominion Triceratops figure. It's got some unique coloring with the orange in the front, right next to the dark green, and then some lighter green along the back of its body. Plus, it has a roaring action when you press down on its back. Ooh, check it out. Here is a Therizinosaurus figure. This has some bright red and some soft blue coloring. Of course, it's got the huge claws on its hands, and it has a really long neck and a bunch of small teeth in its mouth too. Over here, we've got a few flying dinosaurs. These are smaller figures. I believe that both of these are Pteranodon figures. This first one's got some cool reflective gold coloring on its head. The rest of its body is like a dark green color. And this second one is more of a grayish color. It still has some yellow on its face, but this one actually has a button on its back to flap its wings. Looks like we've got another big dinosaur in here. This one looks quite a bit different. It's still made by Hasbro, but it's a different toy line than the rest. But check it out, it still has a chomping action when you press down on its body. Looks like we've got yet another T-Rex in here. This one is the dark green with black detailing along the top and is one of my personal favorites. Its limbs are adjustable just like the other T-Rexes, and it has the jaw chomping action. Check it out, here is the second Therizinosaurus of the collection, and this one is made by Hasbro for the Jurassic World Dominion series. It's got a bunch of cool feather texturing all over its body with the red stripe, and it has a jaw chomping action that you can activate by pressing the button on its tail. Oh, look at this. Way down here, we've got a Lego collection. This might be a Carnotaurus, I think, because it's got those two huge horns at the top of its head. It's got some pretty crazy coloring overall, though. It's got bright blue, some neon orange. Check out those yellow eyes, too. Here's another Pteranodon figure, but it is way larger than the ones that we saw earlier. You can unfold its wings to show the full wingspan and check out the detailing along its body, which is pretty neat. And it's got two action buttons on its back, one for the jaw and one for flapping its wings. I've got another big Lego dinosaur in here. This one might be a Baryonyx, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments below what dinosaur species you think this is. In the back here, we've got a good old Ankylosaurus figure. This one has the blue top with the spikes all over the top and the sides, and a slide lever action to swing its tail around. Here is a Dilophosaurus figure. This is a basic series Dilophosaurus, so there's no action button, but it's still got some ginormous frills in the front with a huge yellow crown and a dark red body with adjustable limbs. Looks like I've got some Velociraptor figures in here as well. Let's check out these three. This first one is an extreme battle damage Velociraptor from Jurassic World Dominion. Check that out, you can turn it on and off. There's also the Velociraptor blue figure with opposable legs, arms, and mouth. And there's this crazy looking Velociraptor that has some really cool detailing along its back. Plus, it's got some golden eyes too. Up next, we've got the Majingasaurus. This figure is a little bit bigger than the Velociraptor figures, and it's got some yellow, blue, and green on its body. Plus, you can use the tail to move the head around. In In the back here, we've got what looks like a Brachiosaurus figure with dark red and some yellow detailing along with the black too. Check out those green eyes. I found another Velociraptor figure. This is an older figure. It's got the tan with the green striping, but unfortunately there is no action button on this figurine. Here's another Velociraptor figure from the same era. This one has the dark green with black stripes on the top and the yellow underbelly. But once again, sadly, there is no action button on this figure. Check out this weird looking dinosaur. This figure is designed to hang on to your finger, and it actually is battery powered with sound effects and with movement. Over here we've got the Sauropelta with the light green and dark green coloring. Here is the Zuniceratops figure with the yellow and gray coloring. It's got the two huge horns on its head. There's also a few Pachycephalosaurus figures in here. This one has battle damage on the side that you can open and close. And the other Pachycephalosaurus actually has a headbutting action when you move its tail. Here's another winged figure. This is a Dimorphodon. It's got the fiery red and orange coloring on the underside of its wings and the dark green along the top. Oh, look at that. There's actually another Sauropelta figure right here. This one has the brown and clay red coloring. Next up is a small figure. This is a Gallimimus, although it's got some pretty detailed coloring running along its back all the way to its head. Here's a Stygimoloch figure. It's got a hard head just like the Pachycephalosaurus, but it's also got some spikes coming out right behind it. And on this figure, you can use the tail for the headbutting action too. Ooh, right over here, we've got an Atrociraptor figure. This one is tan, and it is in the stealth pose. You can see it's crawling along the ground. This one looks to be like a Kentrosaurus figure. This one was not made by Hasbro, so it looks quite a bit different, but it's still got those iconic horns coming right outside of the shoulders. Up next is a miniature Dilophosaurus figure. Check out that super bright and colorful frills. Now here's a teeny tiny dinosaur figure. This is from the Snap Squads. And this is a Triceratops figure. Look at that, it's even got teeth on the inside. That's a nice little detail. And the last figure in this first bin is the Elaphrosaurus figure. I think this one's pretty recent, came out in 2023. Let's dive into our second bin of dinosaur figures right here. But before we do, let's check out these officially licensed Jurassic World Heroes of Goo-Jitsu figures. This first one is a Mosasaurus figure. It's got a chomp attack action. Looks like it has fish on the inside or something like that from that picture. So let's open it up and check it out. Here we go, and wow, this thing is extremely squishy and stretchy. It also comes with that chomping action, so you can snap its jaw shut, just like that. But the biggest feature of this is its gooey body. Super squishy, it's still got the texture like a normal Mosasaurus, and it's got its fins as well. But when you squeeze it, let's see what's on the inside of it. All right, there is fish bones in there. That is super crazy looking. Wow, they're just floating in all that goo. It's pretty relaxing to squeeze, actually. That's really cool that they actually put something inside the goo, so you can only see it when you expand it. The other Goo-Jitsu figure that I got for Jurassic World is this Pyroraptor. It also has the chomp attack action, and instead of having goo on the inside, this one is super stretchy. So let's open it up and see. Oh yeah, this one feels totally different from the Mosasaurus. It's actually like pretty hard. You can squeeze it and it moves, but it doesn't have the goo on the inside like the other figure does. You can open and close its mouth for that jaw chomping action. And this one has some feather texturing on its body as well. It has some huge feathers on its arms. Now this figure is supposed to stretch really far, so let's see if we can stretch it. Oh, look at that. There are some different things on the inside of even this figure. Wow, that is super stretchy. It's really strong and hard to stretch. Let's see if we can find out what is that. It looks like feathers are on the inside of this figure. All right, let's get back to our regular figures. I've got an Albertosaurus figure right here with the green and the orange striping on the side. It also has a chomp button on its tail too. Here is the Sound Surge Indominus Rex figure. It's got the classic gray coloring with a little bit of brown and the spikes all over its body, and of course some really cool sound effects. Here's a pretty new figure. This is the Spinosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It stands on all 4 legs. It has some pretty cool paint detailing on its body. It's got a huge spine just like a Spinosaurus, and a jaw-chopping action by pressing the button on its tail. Back here is a Carnotaurus figure with a dark brown and black coloring. It's got a little bit of battle damage right on its nose, and it has posable legs, arms, and a tail, and you can use the tail to move the head around too. Check it out, here is the Hammond Collection Triceratops figure. This one is way more posable than the standard figures, and I think this one looks a bit more lifelike because of how detailed it is. Look at all that wear and tear on its horns. That's really cool. This is the Tarbosaurus figure. It's got a mostly dark body, it has some black striping along its back, and the brightest part is its neck and its chin. It's also got these really cool huge spines that run all the way down its tail, and of course a button on its tail for the chomping action. Up next is the Carcharodontosaurus figure. This figure too has some spikes running down its back to its tail, and it also has an action button for the chomping action too. Plus, all of its limbs are posable too. From Jurassic World Dominion, this is the Rajasaurus figure. It's a bit smaller than some of the other Predator figures, but it has a really cool chomping action when you press down on its body. This is an aquatic dinosaur. I believe it's called the Kronosaurus. It's got some huge teeth in its mouth, as well as some teeny tiny ones. And it has an action button on its back, so you can swing its head back and forth. Over here, we've got another Carnotaurus figure. This one looks quite a bit different though. It's a lot more bright in color. Its spikes on its back are this gold color. The horns are also a bright color too. And it has this really big action button on its back for chomping. Way back here is an herbivore. This is the Sinoceratops with the light green and the bright yellow coloring. And this figure has a roaring action when you press down on its body. Oh, look at this. This is actually another Sinoceratops figure, but this one is in the gray and tan coloring. And instead of just a simple roaring action, it actually has a tail that moves the head around with sound effects. Here is the Parasaurolophus figure. It's mostly yellow, it's got some brown striping with 2 action buttons. One controls the head, moves it up and down, and the other button controls its tail. Check it out, we've got another Lego Jurassic World figure. This one, I believe, is a Brachiosaurus figure because it's got a huge body that walks on all 4 legs, and it's got this really long and flexible neck. Pretty cool, it's got some cool slash detailing on its body, and is pretty large for a Lego figure. Next up is the Metriocanthosaurus figure in the yellow and green color. Let's check out that chomp action. Back here is a model T-Rex figure. Looks like it's an orange color. It's got some really cool muscle detailing all over its body. And here's another Lego figure. This one though is a T-Rex. Check that out. It's a dark brown color. It has some darker brown detailing all over its body, and you can even open and close its jaw. This next figure is not a dinosaur. It is actually a human inside one of those balls from the Jurassic World movie that you can drive around in. It's pretty cool. This is a baby Brachiosaurus figure with the gray and purple-ish color on the top. Let's check out these Stegosauruses next. I've actually got quite a few in here. This first one is a newer one. It's got the brown, green, and clay red coloring, and it has the action when you press down on its spine, it swings its tail back and forth. Down here somewhere, oh here it is the baby version of that Stegosaurus. It's got the same type of coloring with the green and the clay red on the top, but it is a whole lot smaller. Look at that, even its tail is really small. Let's see what other Stegosaurus is. Here's one. This Stegosaurus is brown, it's got some tan and green, and this one has 2 action buttons. The first moves its head up and down, and the second button does the classic tail swinging action. And we've got another Triceratops in here. This one is in a gray and darker gray color. It's got the light pink underbelly, and of course the tail slashing action. Oh, look at that. I've actually got another one with identical coloring in here. So this one is actually just a twin. Here's another large dinosaur. This one's actually really cool. This is a Velociraptor beta figure. And it's pretty cool because it has some lifelike movements. You can have it walk side to side like this, and you can even have it chomp while pressing down on its body. I've got another Ankylosaurus figure in here. This one has the gray, green, and brown coloring, plus a button for the tail swinging action. I see a few Baryonyx figures in here. This first one, I believe, is Baryonyx Grim, or Limbo maybe? I actually can't remember their name. It's got the bright green coloring and the action button on the top for chomping its jaw. Here is the second Baryonyx figure in here with totally different coloring. I love the bright blue coloring along the top of its head, and the slide lever action for the roaring and sound effects. And the third Baryonyx is right here. It's got battle damage on its neck and on its leg, and of course it has a button for the chomping action. Looks like I've got a few Ceratosaurus figures in here as well. This first one I think is from Camp Cretaceous. It's got the iconic red coloring running all the way up to its head with the slide lever action for roaring and sound effects. And this other Ceratosaurus is actually a Hammond collection figure. It's got some pretty similar coloring to the Ceratosaurus we just saw, but its limbs are way more posable, and I think there's a bit more texturing on its skin too. Hidden in the bottom here is another Carnotaurus figure. This one is from the Fallen Kingdom collection, so it's actually a bit older than a lot of these other figures. And it's got the button on its back for the chomping action. Let's see, what's next? Let's go with this Allosaurus figure. We haven't seen that many Allosauruses in this collection, but this one is probably one of my favorites because of its color. Plus, it's got those little spikes on the top of its head that run down its back, and of course, a slide lever action for roaring with sound effects. Here's another ginormous winged dinosaur. I believe it's actually another Pteranodon figure. Once its wings are opened up, you can see that there are two buttons, one for its mouth and one to flap the wings. This next figure is the Rowdy Roars Atrociraptor. Let's press that button on the top of its head. Oh, you know what? Here's another Atrociraptor figure, and I got this one pretty recently too. It has some really cool bright red coloring along its arms and on its shoulders, and it's got this interesting backpack tracker system on it too. Down at the bottom here, here's another one of those figures that fit on your finger. But just like that, they rest on your finger, and they have sound effects and movement too. Look at that, even its eyes blink. This next figure is a classic Triceratops figure. It's got some bright red coloring though, which is a cool feature. I've also got another Stegosaurus in here. It's got some pretty realistic coloring and some bright spines. Here is a very small Parasaurolophus figure. It's got some cool brown coloring with some lighter brown on the sides, and it looks like it has some tiny yellow eyes. This next figure down here, I believe, is called a Protoceratops. This is a pretty weird looking dinosaur. It's got some bright coloring all over its body too. Up next, I think I've got a couple Herrerasaurus figures. This first figure is a battle damage one that you can open and close right on the side. And this other figure is not a battle damage edition, but it has some gray and white detailing. I've also got a bright Monolophosaurus figure right here, and it has a chomping action that's activated by moving the tail. This one's pretty cool. This is actually a Dilophosaurus without the frills, which, as it turns out, may be fictional from the Jurassic Park movie. I've got a few more Velociraptor figures in here. This first one looks a lot like Velociraptor Blue, but it's not made by Hasbro. It's still got the iconic blue stripe running down its side. And there's also this similar looking Velociraptor. It's got some white with some black spots on its body and a little bit of red along the top of its head. And this one is made by Mattel. It features some bright red coloring with purple stripes running down the sides. All right, only a few left. This one, I'm actually not sure what it is, but it looks like it's holding an egg. Maybe it's stealing it. Comment below if you recognize this dinosaur species. Here's a crazy looking dinosaur that walks on all four legs. It looks kind of like a Sarcosuchus, but I'm actually not sure. And this figure is really feathered. Check out all that feather design on its tail and on its arms and its back. And it's got a pretty wild looking head too. For now, let's get started with the biggest figure in this collection. This is the Battle Damage Indominus Rex. This figure stands even taller than many of my T-Rex figures, and it has a button at the bottom of its tail for the chomping action, and a button on its back for the battle damage activation. Next up is the Camp Cretaceous Spinosaurus. This figure is almost as big as the Indominus Rex and features posable arms, legs, tail, and head, and there's a button at the top of the head to activate the jaw. This is the mighty Strike and Roar Giganotosaurus. It's around the same size as the Spinosaurus figure, but this figure has two attack buttons. The first is on its back that swings its whole torso back and forth. And then a second button underneath its tail to activate just the jaw. Over here is the classic Battle Damage T-Rex figure. Now this figure doesn't have any battle damage that gets revealed, but you can see that there's battle damage slashes painted all over its body and even on its chin too. Plus it's fully posable and has a button at the top of its head for the chomping action. Here is a Carnotaurus figure, one of my favorite dinosaurs. It has the bright orange and red body with the brown on the top. It has the tiny front arms, and this figure features the tail that controls the head and the jaw. That's pretty cool. Here's another T-Rex figure, and this one specifically is actually pretty expensive nowadays. It originally came in this jungle green coloring with the black detailing along the top and features a fully posable body with the button at the top of its head for the chomping and roaring. This one's a slightly smaller figure. This is a Carcharodontosaurus figure. It too has the fully posable body and it has a single action button on its back for the chomping action. I've got another T-Rex right here. This one is a very classic looking one with the soft brown on the sides and the darker brown on the top. It has the fully posable body and just like the others, the button on its head for the chomping action. Next up is a smaller Allosaurus figure. This specific figure comes in the dark blue and tan coloring and it has posable arms, legs, and tail, and it has this special slide lever action for sound effects and for chomping the jaw. And here is another T-Rex in the classic brown coloring with some light gray detailing. And this one is actually another Battle Damage T-Rex. So just like the Indominus Rex, you can press this button to reveal the battle damage. And on this figure, instead of having a button at the top of its head for roaring, you can just open and close its mouth manually. Let's go ahead and open up one of the new figures. This is the Dino Trackers Strike Attack Dilophosaurus figure. Now this might be my first Dilophosaurus in more muted coloring. Most of my figures are super bright. This one is mostly gray and with the white body. And what I really like is that this Dilophosaurus has an attack feature when you move its tail. Check that out. Up next here is the Tarbosaurus. This figure comes in the gray coloring with the darker gray along the top and a bunch of spikes running down its entire back. And the brightest part is underneath its chin and on its neck. And like the Carnotaurus that we saw earlier, the tail actually moves the head and controls the jaw too. Here is a Concavinator figure. This is a very unusual looking dinosaur, primarily because of this weird spine running down only half of its back. And not only that, but it has a bright purple face and the bright red spine. And has one action button for the jaw and one action button for the tail. This is a Sarcosuchus figure. I believe there are currently two versions of this dinosaur figure. This one is in the light blue with the purple, red, and orange. And you can use its tail to move its head around, up and down, side to side, and open and close its jaw too. Now here's a classic dinosaur. This is a Triceratops figure. This version comes in the light gray coloring and has two action buttons on its back, one for moving the head and the other for moving the tail back and forth. Let's check out our next brand new figure. This is the Jurassic World Dominion Roar Strikers Pteranodon. Now I have a few other Pteranodon figures of this size, but this is the first one with this coloring that I have. Most of its body is this dark brown coloring. It has the yellow detailing along its wings, and the best part is it has some bright blue along its face. Plus, this Pteranodon has a pretty unique action button. When you press it, it moves its head up and down. That's pretty cool because the button on the other Pteranodon figures usually just flap its wings up and down, so it's cool to have one that moves its head. Next up is a Suchomimus figure. I believe Jurassic World has 2 versions of this dinosaur. This one is in the dark blue with the yellow accent over its body, and it features posable arms, legs, and a tail, and a single action button on its back for the chomping action. Here is the Albertosaurus figure. Now Jurassic World might have 2 or 3 different versions of this one. I know there is one that has battle damage right here on the side, but this is the classic version. Its body is green with the accent of orange, and it features posable arms and the legs, and the tail that controls the head and the jaw. Here is the Majungasaurus dinosaur. It's a bit smaller than many of the other figures, and like the Carnotaurus, has tiny little front arms, but it has some pretty cool coloring. Most of its body is dark green, but it has this yellow and this blue around its face, and on this figure you can use the tail to move the head around. Here's a figure that I'm sure you recognize. This is the Scorpius Rex. And this figure is pretty decently sized, not quite as large as many of the T-Rex figures, but a lot larger than many of the rest. It's got the black body with the yellow underbelly and 2 action buttons, one to operate the jaw, and the other to slash the arms. Plus, this figure's tail is actually spring-loaded, so you can swing it back and forth to hit other dinosaurs with those poisonous quills. Time for another new figure. This is the Dino Trackers Strike Attack Atrociraptor. This is the first Atrociraptor in my collection that has this type of coloring, dark green in the back, and then a yellow green all along the front. That is pretty unique. And even though it's a pretty small figure, it has an action button on its back to move its head up and down. Here's another Triceratops figure, but this one's a bit more special because it's from the Hammond collection. So it has a lot more detailing and better coloring all over its body. Plus, it is super posable. Here's an older dinosaur figure. This is the Metriacanthosaurus dinosaur figure. It's smaller than many of the other carnivore figures that I have, and this version comes in the yellow on the sides and the dark green on top, plus there's a single action button to move its jaw. This crazy looking velociraptor is from the Amber collection, so it's a lot larger than many of my other velociraptor figures, and a whole lot more posable too. Check it out, you can even move the huge claws on its feet up and down. All in all, this is a pretty epic looking velociraptor. Speaking of velociraptors, I've actually got this new Hammond collection velociraptor as part of the Jurassic Park 30th anniversary. Now this figure is a whole lot smaller than the Amber collection velociraptor we just saw, but it's still extremely posable like the Amber collection, and also has some pretty cool coloring too. It's got the yellow underbelly, the green sides, a white stripe, a red tipped tail, and some cool coloring on its face. Here is a basic Spinosaurus figure. It has the same coloring as the Legacy Collection Spinosaurus, which is a whole lot larger. But since it's the basic version, it's quite a bit smaller, and you can only move its arms, its legs, and its tail. Here is our first Baryonyx of the collection. This specific version has the brown body with the dark blue on top, and the reflective blue all along the top of its head. Plus it has one action button to operate the jaw. Here is an Indoraptor figure, and I believe this one is from the Fallen Kingdom era. Kind of like the Hammond collection figures, this dinosaur is very posable, and it doesn't have any action buttons, but you gotta love those bright red eyes. I've got another Allosaurus figure here. This version is in the gray with yellow accenting on its body, and it has posable arms and legs and a single action button on its back for the sound effects. Now we're getting to the smaller figures. This is a Miragaia figure. It stands on all four legs, has spines like a Spinosaurus kind of, and has these two huge spikes coming out of its back. Here's another Indominus Rex figure, but this one is a lot smaller than the first one we saw. It has a little battle damage on the side, and you can pose the arms and legs, and you can use the tail to move the head and the neck. Up next is an Atrociraptor figure. This one is from Jurassic World Dominion and is the battle damage edition. Check that out right there. You can turn the battle damage on and off with the click of a button. Here's another Atrociraptor figure. This one is a lot brighter colored and is actually in a crawling pose, so it's staying close to the ground. I believe this next figure is part of the Dino Tracker series. This is a new Herrerasaurus figure. It has the brown back, the orange middle, and the light brown head, and it has a single action button on its back to operate its head. Here is a Dilophosaurus figure, pretty similar to the one that I opened up a little bit earlier. As you can see, it is a lot more brightly colored, but it still has the same cool attack feature. There's a few winged dinosaurs in here. I believe this first one is called a Dimorphodon, and it has a huge head and a smaller body, and most of its body is this gray color. The other winged dinosaur in here is another Pteranodon. This one is mostly yellow and brown, but it looks like it has some really cool reflective gold coloring on its face. And finally, I've got a few more Velociraptor figures. This first green one right here actually has an attack button on its back for a slashing movement. There's also this gray Velociraptor with the yellow accenting on the top of its body. And then finally, this all yellow Velociraptor with the brown accenting along the top. Plus, it has a battle damage feature on the side that you can open and close. Let's start with this bin on the right. The very first one is a battle damage T-Rex with the orange body and the brown top. This T-Rex is dark green in color. It's got some black detailing along its back, and it's got the button on the top of its head for chomping and roaring. This is the Yangchuanosaurus from the Dominion series. It's got the green body with brown detailing and the orange crown on the top of its head. Here we've got another T-Rex with the soft brown body and the darker brown along the top, and of course the button on the top of its head for chomping and roaring. This Dominion figure is a Siamosaurus. It's got a dark body with the red spine and the red head. Up next, we've got a T-Rex figure, but this is actually a hybrid T-Rex. You can tell because it has spines that pop out of its back by pressing this button, and the jaw opens and closes as well. Here is another T-Rex figure, but this is a gray-brown T-Rex. It's got some darker brown along the top. It's very adjustable, and you can open and close the mouth too. Way back here is a camouflage T-Rex. It's got some sound effects too. You can open and close the mouth, and you can do a chomping effect too. This is a Sarcophagus. It's got some short legs, but it's got the blue body with purple and orange detailing on the top. This super bright dinosaur is another T-Rex. It is custom colored, so it is a bright red. It's got some orange and black as well. Over here is a Scorpius Rex that I'm sure you recognize from the Jurassic World movie. It has two action buttons, one for the jaw and one for the arms. Next up, we've got a Tarbosaurus figure. This is gray and a darker gray. It's got those huge spikes along its spine, and it's got the red chin and neck too. This is a Siatsmicararum. It's got the orange body with the blue detailing on its back and head, and it's got some gray detailing along the back of its body. Back here is a Carcharodontosaurus with the blue body and the brown and orange detailing along its back, all the way up to around its eyes. Here is a Rajasaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It has a dark body with some lighter coloring along its neck, and it has an action button for chomping. Next up, we've got an old Indominus Rex figure. This one is smaller. It's got some battle damage on the side. You can open and close, and you can use the tail to chomp the mouth. Here is a super bright dinosaur. This is the Suchomimus. It's got a bright yellow body with the brown detailing along its spine, and it has two action buttons. One for the jaws, and one to swing the tail. Here is another bright dinosaur. This is a Metriacanthosaurus. It's got the bright red body with some brown detailing on its back and some orange on its head. Here's another Metriacanthus figure. This has a yellow body with some green coloring along the top, and it has the action button on its back for the jaw. This is a super cool looking Allosaurus figure. It's got the gray body with the yellow detailing all over. It's got some awesome looking red right above its eyes, and it's got an action button for the jaw. Right over here is the Majingasaurus with a green, yellow, and blue body, and you can use the tail to control the neck. Here is a Cryolophosaurus figure. This has a bright yellow body with brown detailing and orange along the top of its body. Here's another small Indominus Rex figure. This has battle damage on the side that you can't open or close, but you can still use the tail to open and close the mouth. Next up is the Irritator. This has a brown, blue, and light blue body, and you can use the tail to control the neck. I've got a Baryonyx figure here with a brown, blue, and orange coloring on its body, and it's got an action button on its back for the jaw. Next up is another Allosaurus figure. This one has a brown and blue body, and it has a slide lever action to control the jaw. This Jurassic World figure is a Baryonyx. It's got the gray, white, and blue detailing on its body, and it has the slide lever action to control the jaw too. Next up, I've got the Jurassic World Hammond Collection Parasaurolophus. This figure is a light tan color. It's got some bright orange running all the way down its back, and of course it's got the iconic horn at the top of its head. Here is another Hammond Collection figure. This is the Baryonyx. It is super adjustable and posable, and it's got some pretty cool detailing all along its body. This is a basic Spinosaurus figure. It's got the dark green body with some white detailing, and of course the red along its spine and all around its eyes. Here is the Ceratosaurus figure in the dark green coloring with black detailing on the top and the slide lever action to control the jaw. Here is another Ceratosaurus figure, but this one is in the brown and orange coloring, and it's got a button at the top of its back to control the jaw. Next up, we've got the Extreme Chompin' Carnotaurus. This is a little figure, but it has a huge head, and it has a button to control the eyes, and a button for chomping too. This figure is from the Amber Collection. I believe this one is Velociraptor Tiger. As you can tell, it's got the stripes all over its body with the orange, making it a pretty bright dinosaur. I've got a few Dimetrodon figures in here too. This first one is a light blue with a red spine. I've also got this green Dimetrodon with an even brighter red spine. Here is a small Carnotaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. Next up, I've got a few Monolophosaurus figures. This first one is a soft green color with darker detailing, and this other figure is a brown Monolophosaurus with gray detailing on its body. Here is a baby Brachiosaurus in the light green color. Got a couple horned small dinosaurs here. This first one is the Zuniceratops. It's got some bright coloring on the side of its body, and this one is the battle damaged Triceratops. I've got a few small Dilophosaurus figures in here as well. This first one is brown, blue, and white, especially on the front. And this other one is a soft green, and it's got some orange, red, and yellow on its body. This is the battle damaged Coelurus figure. You can see that you can press this button on its back to activate the battle damage on the side. Let's see what else I got. I've got another Monolophosaurus figure. This one is a bright green color. It's got some red on the front. And this is a Herrerasaurus. It is a gray-blue color with the white detailing along the top of its body. Of course, I've got a few Velociraptor figures in here in this first bin. This first one is a green color. It has a button on its back to activate the arms. And this second Velociraptor figure has its legs spring-loaded, so you can actually launch it into the air. And the last one's in this first bin. We still have one more bin to go. I've got a handful of herbivore figures. This first figure is a Minmi in the green coloring. I've also got a Sauropelta in the red and gray coloring with the huge spikes. Here is Ankylosaurus Bumpy from Camp Cretaceous. And can you guess the name of this herbivore dinosaur? Let me know down in the comments below. Now it's time for this second bin that will complete my 100 Jurassic World dinosaur figure haul. And I've actually got some brand new ones that we're gonna open up before we get into the bin. This first one is the Ceratosaurus figure. Alright, so this figure is mostly red. It's got some yellow detailing along the top of its back and neck. And it's got some lime green eyes too. It's pretty cool. Next up is the Jurassic World Velociraptor figure. This Velociraptor is orange in color. It's got some brown detailing along the top, and it's got those bright yellow eyes. Next up is the Jurassic World Atrociraptor figure. This Atrociraptor figure is the white and brown one that I'm sure you recognize from the movie, and it's got those evil-looking red eyes. And next up, we've got the Jurassic World Pyroraptor. I'm sure you recognize this figure from the Jurassic World Dominion movie as well. It's got a black and red body, and it's got those yellow-orange eyes too. Here we've got the small sound surge Giganotosaurus. It still has the green coloring with the black detailing along the top, and it comes with some sound effects. Here is another Giganotosaurus figure, but a whole lot larger. Still has the same coloring with a bit more detail with the black, I think. And it's got two actions. The first is for swinging the torso back and forth. And the second is for the jaws. This is a Spinosaurus figure that is dark green in color, just like the one we saw earlier, and it has the red detailing along its spine and all over its head too. Next up, we've got a Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. It is tan in color and it has a button on its back to activate the jaw. Here we've got another Carcharodontosaurus figure. We saw one earlier that had totally different coloring. This one is tan in color and it's got brown and orange detailing all along its back up to its head. This is a giant Indominus Rex figure with extreme battle damage on the side that you can turn on and off by pressing a button. I've got another Indominus Rex figure here. This one does not have the battle damage on the side, but instead the button activates the claws for slashing. Here's one of my coolest Spinosaurus figures. It has the most intricate detailing and coloring out of all of my Spinosaurus figures. It's got some blue on the spine, its eyes are a bright green color, and of course it's got the button at the top of its head for opening and closing the jaw. Here's another Sarcophagus figure. This one is green on the sides and belly and clay red along the top. Next up is an Allosaurus figure. This one is dark green with white and red detailing along its back and neck. And it's got the slide lever action to activate the jaw and sound effects. This is the Endoraptor. This figure actually has two actions. The first is on its tail. When you press that, it swings its arms shut. It's also got a button on the bottom of its tail to activate the jaw. And you can use the tail to swing the torso around too. This is a Megaraptor figure from the new Jurassic World Dominion movie. It's got some huge claws in the front and it's got a red and blue body. Down here we've got a Stegosaurus figure that is gray-blue and has some darker detailing along the top. And it has an action button to activate the tail for swinging back and forth. Here is another Scorpius Rex figure, but this is the basic edition, so you can't open and close the jaw, but you can still move the arms, the legs, and the tail. Back here is the Ankylosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got a bright clay red body with the brown detailing on top, and you can use the tail to control the neck and the jaws too. I believe this dinosaur is called an Amargosaurus. It's got the brown body with black detailing and the red all along its neck down to its tail too. And it's got two action buttons, one to activate the neck and one to activate the tail. This is a big Velociraptor blue figure. You can see the iconic blue all the way down its back, and of course the yellow eyes too. Here we've got another Allosaurus figure. This one is tan, dark blue, and bright blue, and it has 2 action buttons, one for the jaw and one for the arms. Here is a large Dilophosaurus figure. It has a battle damage button on the side, and it's got some super bright colors all over. It's got green, yellow, orange, and it's got some brown detailing all along its body too. If I remember correctly, this is an Iguanodon figure. It's got some detailing of tan and darker brown along the top, and it has an action button that moves its head up and down. This is a hybrid Triceratops Stegosaurus. It's got some battle damage on the side, and its entire body is super bright. It's got blue, it's got dark blue, and it's got a bunch of gold all over its body too. This is a Suchomimus in the dark blue color with the yellow detailing along its spine, and it's got 1 action button to activate the jaw. I've got another large Velociraptor figure in here. This one is the orange color, and this actually might be the same one that I opened up earlier on. It's got the brown detailing on the top and the yellow eyes too. This figure, I believe, is the Proceratosaurus. It's got a tan body with gray detailing and the red nose and orange eyes. Here we've got another Stegosaurus figure. This one is in a light blue-green color. It's got darker detailing along the top, and of course it's got the action button for swinging the tail back and forth. This is a Triceratops figure. It's got the clay red coloring with the brown detailing, and it's got an action button on its back to move the head up and down. This is a small Spinosaurus figure, and it is super brightly colored with the blue and red along its spine. It's also got some battle damage, and you can use the tail to move the head around too. I've got 2 small T-Rex figures in here. This first one though is actually a hybrid T-Rex, a hybrid with a Dilophosaurus, and it's got this super bright orange and gold all over its body. And this second smaller T-Rex figure is green with the battle damage on the side, and you can use the tail to control the mouth just like the other one. Our second to last dinosaur is a hybrid Stegosaurus Triceratops. This one is brown in color, it's got some yellow detailing on its legs, and it's got the battle damage on the side. And our final dinosaur of the 100 Jurassic World dinosaur figures is the Nasutoceratops. With the dark blue body, it's got the green legs and the red detailing along the top. The first figure is this giant Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's got a dark green body with the yellow underbelly and the black top and a button that activates the jaw. This figure is the Dino Tracker series Endoraptor. Check it out. And there's a button on its back that activates the jaw too. Here is the Camp Cretaceous Spinosaurus. This figure is ginormous, and it's got the button at the top of its head to activate the jaw. Over here we've got another Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. This one's a little bit smaller. It's got the brown coloring and the jaw attack button. This is the Dino Tracker's Sinotyrannus figure. It's got 2 buttons on its back, one to activate the jaw and one to activate the tail. Here is the Suchomimus figure with the dark blue and yellow coloring. It's got the big spine running down its back and an attack button for its jaw. Here is an old Jurassic World figure. This one was actually custom painted to be red and black, and it has an action button on its back to activate the jaw. This is the Carcharodontosaurus figure with the blue, orange, and brown coloring. This is the Albertosaurus figure in the green and orange coloring, and it has an attack button on its tail to operate the jaw. Next up is the Sound Surge Tyrannosaurus Rex from Jurassic World Dominion. Here's another Dino Trackers figure. This is the Diabloceratops. Check out that awesome red coloring and this action button that moves its head. This Pteranodon figure, I believe, is part of the Amber collection. It actually has rubberized wings, so it feels really realistic. This is the Rowdy Roars Carnotaurus figure. It's got the classic coloring for a Carnotaurus and an action button for chomping. Here is the gigantic tracker Stegosaurus. It comes with this cool backpack feature, and it has 2 buttons on its back that swing the tail up and down and back and forth. Here is a classic Baryonyx figure with the reflective blue coloring on the top of its head. Next up, we've got a Cryolophosaurus figure in the bright yellow coloring with the brown and orange detailing. This figure right here is a Spinosaurus. This is a basic figure, so there's not a whole lot you can do with it, but you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail. Here from Jurassic World Dominion is an Iguanodon figure. It's got the soft tan coloring and an attack button when you press down on its back. This figure is a Kentrosaurus. It looks quite a bit like a Stegosaurus, but it's got these huge spikes on the side that you can swing back and forth. This figure, I believe, is called an Edmontosaurus. It's got some pretty cool coloring, and you can use the tail to control the head. Next up, we've got a basic Velociraptor figure in the orange color. You can move its arms, its legs, and its tail. Here is the dark green Ceratosaurus figure. It has a slide lever action on its back to activate the sound effects, and its chomping action. This is a Triceratops figure in the brown, blue, and dark blue coloring. And on this figure, you can move the tail to move the head around. Here is an older and pretty rare Jurassic World figure. This is a hybrid Tyrannosaurus and Dilophosaurus. And check out that super bright coloring. Up next, we've got a Sinoceratops figure in the soft green coloring. And this figure features the tail that you can use to move the head around. This next figure is an Allosaurus in the gray and yellow coloring, and it has an attack button on its back to chomp its jaw open and closed. Here's a dinosaur figure that I don't have that many of. This is a Concavinator. It's got a huge spine on its back that actually you can press to swing its tail back and forth. Plus, there's an action button on the front of its back to chomp its jaw open and closed. Here is a Pteranodon figure with foldable wings. And when it's fully expanded, it's probably over a foot long. Plus, there's a button on its back to flap its wings back and forth. Here is a miniature Indominus Rex figure with a little bit of battle damage on its side. I've also got this older Jurassic World Allosaurus figure, and it looks quite a bit different from the new Allosaurus figures that Mattel is releasing. Up next is a miniature Dilophosaurus figure with the purple and some bright yellow, red, and orange. This is a Moros Intrepidus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got the green, orange, and white body. Here is a Velociraptor Beta figure. It's got the classic blue stripe down both sides, and you can move its arms, its legs, and its tail too. Next, I've got a battle damage Atrociraptor figure. Check it out, you can turn on and off the battle damage with the click of a button. Here is a Pachycephalosaurus figure in the orange and green coloring, and it has an action. We press down on the tail and it headbutts. Check out this crazy looking dinosaur. I actually can't remember the name of it, so let me know in the comments below if you know what it is. Here is a super bright Velociraptor figure with the red and the green stripes on top. Plus, it's actually spring-loaded. Up next, I've got a Zunoceratops figure with the green and dark blue coloring. Check out those huge horns on the top of its head, too. Here's another spring-loaded Velociraptor. This one is brown, though. Up next is a small Parasaurolophus figure. And actually, what comes with this figure is a Dr. Ian Malcolm figure. This is a Dimetrodon figure with a huge bright orange spine all the way down its back. This figure is the baby Brachiosaurus with the light green and darker green coloring on top. Here I've got a Monolophosaurus figure with the brown and gray detailing. From Jurassic World Dominion, this is another Atrociraptor figure. This one has the orange and the tan striping. I've also got a miniature Pyroraptor figure here. This one has the classic red and black coloring, along with a feather texture along all of its body. I've also got some more miniature Velociraptor figures in here. This first one has an action button on its back to swing its arms back and forth. And I've also got this bright yellow and brown Velociraptor figure too. It's got some battle damage right there on the side. This unusual figure is a mini dinosaur. It's got the spikes all the way down its back and on top of its head. This next figure is a baby T-Rex, and it comes with an action. When you move its tail, it chomps its jaw open and closed. And here we've got a miniature Pteranodon figure. Plus it has an action button on its back to flap its wings. Let's open up some brand new ones next. Let's see what this one is. These are a bunch of uncaged, wild pop-ups. First up, we've got Velociraptor Blue. Next up is a Dilophosaurus. There's also a Carnotaurus, and best of all, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Next up, I've got a new Jurassic World Dominion Triceratops figure. Let's check it out. This Triceratops has the soft green body with the darker green and the orange in the front. Let's move on to our second bin here. This figure is the Spinosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got a button right on its tail to activate the jaw. Up next is the Ankylosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It has a super long neck and an action button to activate the jaw. Now here is a really cool looking T-Rex. This is a custom colored T-Rex to look like fire. And of course, it's got the button at the top of its head to open and close its jaw. Here is the Scorpius Rex figure from Camp Cretaceous. It's got two action buttons, one to activate its jaw and one to activate its arms. This is a battle damage baryonyx figure. You can check out that battle damage on its neck and on its leg, and it has an action button on its back for chomping. This interesting looking dinosaur is an Amargospinus. This dinosaur also has a long neck and some amazing looking spines on its back. Here is the Jurassic World Dominion T-Rex with the Battle Damage Edition. You can click the battle damage on and off just with the button on top. Here's a vintage Jurassic World figure. This one is actually a hybrid T-Rex. I think it's mixed with a Spinosaurus. Check it out. It's got some spines that pop out right at the top of its back. Next up, we've got the amazing Therizinosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. You can use the tail to swivel its body around and use the action button on its tail to open and close the jaw. Next up, we've got a Stegosaurus figure in the light blue-green color. Plus, it has an action button. When you press down here, it swings its tail back and forth. Here's one of the largest Atrociraptor figures that I have. This one comes in the classic white with brown striping. I've got another extreme battle damage T-Rex here, but instead of battle damage shown right here, there's actually painted battle damage all over its body. Next up, I've got a Sarcosuchus figure. This dinosaur is really long and short, and you can use the tail to control the head. Here's another T-Rex figure. This one is in a soft brown with darker brown along the top, and of course the action button at the top of the head to operate the jaw. Next up, this figure is the Giganotosaurus. It has two action buttons, one to swing its torso, and one to open and close the jaw. This is the Indoraptor with the gold stripe and the black body, and it is a very posable dinosaur figure. This is the basic Velociraptor Blue figure. You can move its arms, its legs, and its tail, and of course it's got the awesome iconic coloring. From the Hammond collection here, we've got the Baryonyx figure. It is very posable, and it's got some awesome coloring too. Here's a crazy looking dinosaur. This is a special edition Ankylosaurus figure. It actually has a removable shell. I've also got the regular edition Ankylosaurus as well. This figure is from Jurassic World Dominion. This is the Sound Surge Giganotosaurus figure. Check it out, it's another Sarcosuchus figure, but this one has some different coloring with the purple, orange, red, and blue. Here is another Ceratosaurus figure, but this one is in the brown and orange coloring. Let's check out that chomping action. Here is a vintage Jurassic World Mosasaurus figure. It's a lot smaller than the figures that are coming out with now, and it's got some battle damage that you can open and close right on the side. Next up is one of the largest winged dinosaurs. This is the Quetzalcoatlus. This figure has two action buttons, one to flap the wings, and the other to open and close the mouth. This figure is super old. This is a Jurassic Park Spinosaurus figure. Here are a few small figures. These are both Gallimimuses. I've got another Dimetrodon figure in here. This one has an action. When you press down on its tail, it opens and closes its jaw. This winged figure is a Dimorphodon. Check out those fiery wings. From Camp Cretaceous, we've got a baby Ankylosaurus Bumpy figure. This next figure is from Jurassic World Dominion. This is a Miragaia. Check out those huge spikes coming out of its shoulders. Next up, we've got another classic Ceratosaurus figure. This one has the yellow, black, and red coloring. Here's another dinosaur with some huge spikes coming out of its back. This is a Sauropelta. This next little dinosaur, I believe, is called a Coelurus. It's got a tan body with some brown and some blue detailing. Over here, we've got some Monolophosaurus figures, one in a soft green color, and it's got some battle damage on the side, and one in a dark blue with some tan coloring. I've also got some more Velociraptor figures in here. I've got a Velociraptor Beta figure. Here's another spring-loaded, super bright Velociraptor figure. And a dark green Velociraptor in the stealth crawling pose. This next figure is a Carnotaurus, and this one is from Jurassic World Dominion. It's pretty unique because it's got the dark green body with the orange detailing, and it's also got a broken horn on the top of its head. Here is a Stygimoloch figure. It's got some gray and some dark blue coloring and some huge spikes coming out of its head. Plus, this figure has an action. When you press down on its tail, it activates the headbutting. Here we've got another aquatic dinosaur. I believe this one is called a Plesiosaurus, and it has one action button on its back to flap its flippers. And last of all, we've got a baby Triceratops figure in the light green coloring and some battle damage on the side that you can open and close. Let's get started with this bin on the right. First up is this hybrid Indominus Rex figure. Even got sound effects too. Plus, there's spikes that come out on its back too. This is an extreme battle damage orange Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's got the battle damage all over its body, and there's an action at the top of its head to activate the jaw. Next up is the Stomp and Escape T-Rex. This T-Rex has a button on its back for the jaws, and you can use the tail for a stomping action. Here's another Indominus Rex figure. This one has a rubber neck while the rest of its body is a hard plastic, and you can use the arms to open and close the jaws. Over here, we've got a Terran T-Rex. This T-Rex is pretty cool because it has a button that activates the tearing action with its mouth. Look at that. That's pretty intense. And there's another button on its back to activate the tail. Over here, we've got a really cool Spinosaurus figure. This figure is pretty big, and it's got some awesome coloring and detailing all over its body. And like many of the other large figures, it has a button on the top of its head to activate the jaw. This, I believe, is called the Seats Microrarum. It's got an orange and blue body with some gray detailing as well. It's got tons of spikes on its head, and you can use the tail to control the mouth and the neck. This is an orange Velociraptor. It's a pretty basic figure, so you can only move the arms, the legs, and the tail, but it's pretty large and still pretty cool. Here is a huge Allosaurus figure. This has the classic coloring for many of the Allosaurus figures, and best of all, it's got battle damage right on the side that you can open and close. This is a T-Rex figure, but with some cool coloring. It's got the red and the black spots all over its body. and the light underbelly as well. Plus it's got an action button on its back to activate the jaw. Here's a similar T-Rex of the same size, but with totally different coloring, and actually this one is a hybrid T-Rex because it has spines that pop out of its back, just like that. Next up is a Carcharodontosaurus figure. This figure is medium sized and it has one action button on its back to activate the chomping action. This is an Albertosaurus figure. It's got the dark green body with orange detailing, and you can use the tail to control the head and jaw on this figure. Here is a medium-sized Velociraptor figure. It's a lot bigger than many of the Velociraptor figures that I have, and I actually have a few other that are very similar to it as well. Check these out. They're all around the same size and have many of the same features. This one is a light tan with green stripes, this one's darker colored, and this one actually has some battle damage on its side that you can press. I believe this dinosaur is a Pachycephalosaurus. It's got a dark purple coloring with some detailing along the top and an action button with its tail for the headbutting. Next up, we've got a smaller Indominus Rex figure with battle damage on the side that you can open and close. That's pretty cool. Plus, you can use the tail to control the head on this figure too. Next up, I believe this is the Nasutoceratops figure. It's got the dark blue body with some different coloring all throughout. It's got those huge horns in the front and two action buttons. One to lift up its head and one to swing its tail. This is a huge Pteranodon figure. It's pretty basic because it can't do a whole lot, but it has some pretty cool coloring on the wings. You can move the wings up and down, as well as open and close the mouth. I've got another winged dinosaur here, but I'm actually not sure what type of dinosaur this is, so let me know in the comments below. This big dinosaur, I believe, is called an Amargosaurus. It's got two huge ridges on its neck that go all the way down its back to its tail, and it has two action buttons, one to operate the neck and one to operate the tail. Here's another huge Velociraptor figure. This one is actually Velociraptor Blue. It's got these stripes down its side, and you can move the arms, the legs, and the tail on this figure. This is the basic Scorpius Rex figure. It's got the poisonous quills on its tail, and you can move the arms and legs on this figure too. Next up is the Pentaceratops figure. This figure is pretty close to a Triceratops, but it's got a huge frill on the front and a ton more horns too. You can use the action button to lift up its neck and to swing its torso around too. Here's a couple more medium-sized Velociraptor figures. This first one is a dark green with black stripes, and this other one is a lot brighter, and it actually has battle damage on its side as well. That's pretty cool. Plus, with this figure, you can use the tail to open and close the jaw. Here is a Triceratops figure with the clay red coloring and the brown on the top, and it's got one action button to lift up the head. This next figure, I believe, is the Sinoceratops. Also looks quite a bit like a Triceratops as well, but again, some big differences in the front. And with this figure, you can use the tail to control the head. Next up is the giant Quetzalcoatlus dinosaur. This winged dinosaur is from the new Jurassic World Dominion movie and has a few action buttons on it. The first action button you can press to flap its wings, and the second button activates its jaw. Here's a Dimetrodon figure with the light blue-gray coloring on the sides and the giant red spine on top. Check out these smaller dinosaurs. I think these are both called Proceratops. We've got one with the purple coloring and a little bit of yellow. The other one is light green with also some yellow coloring as well. This is a dark green and light green Sauropelta with those huge spikes coming out of its back. Here is a smaller carnivore dinosaur. This is a Herrerasaurus, and it's got an action button with its tail that opens and closes its jaw. Here is a Styracosaurus figure. It's got those two super bright circles right on the front and tons of horns around its head too. Here is the Shringosaurus figure. It's pretty odd looking. It's got the yellow body with the brown detailing on top and a super long neck and some horns at the very top. This is the Miragaia figure. It's got a dark body with some lighter coloring in the back, and those two giant horns sticking out of its back too. Here's a smaller Triceratops figure with battle damage right on the side that you can open and close. This is a Stygimoloch figure with the dark brown coloring on the sides and some darker detailing along the top, plus an action button to activate the headbutting action. This is a Parasaurolophus figure. This is a newer one, I think from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got the light tan body with some darker detailing right along the top. Here's another Pachycephalosaurus figure with a light tan body and the darker coloring along the top, and the action button on its tail to activate the headbutting. This is a baby Brachiosaurus figure. You can move the neck up and down as well as move the legs and open and close the jaw too. And here are two Gallimimus figures, one with a dark green coloring and one with the light tan and brown coloring along the top. We've got one more bin to go, but before we do, let's check out these brand new ones that I just bought, including this giant Dreadnoughtus figure. Let's open this one up first. All right, here is the Dreadnoughtus fully assembled. It's actually really hard to show even the whole thing on camera because it is so long. This neck is a lot longer than a Brachiosaurus, I think. Let's check out the head first. You can open and close its mouth. And you can move the neck back and forth. See that swivel right there? You can adjust the legs. And you can even move the tail back and forth too. This figure is ginormous, and it has some pretty cool coloring along the top and the sides as well. This next figure, I think, is pronounced the Rugops Primus figure. It's from the Ferocious pack of Jurassic World Dominion. This is a pretty cool looking figure. It's got the dark green body with the black tail and the black detailing around its head. And you can move the legs, the arms, the neck, and the head as well. Next up is the Jurassic World Herrerasaurus figure. This figure has a lighter green body with some teal blue coloring along the top, while its face is that dark green color too. You can open and close the jaws manually, and you can move all the other limbs as well. Next is the Jurassic World Legacy Collection Dr. Ian Malcolm. Here is Dr. Ian Malcolm with his fiery torch, and it also came with this small dinosaur. I can't remember the name of this dinosaur, but it's a pretty cool set. And next, we've got the Camp Cretaceous Soundstrike Pteranodon. All right, let's unfold those wings. This is a pretty big dinosaur. It's probably a foot long from wingtip to wingtip, and it's got a few action buttons as well. The first one you can press to flap its wings and get some sound effects. And the second button activates its jaw. Now let's dig into this second bin. First off, we've got an Indominus Rex figure. This figure is huge and has the classic gray coloring that you can see in the movies. Over here is another Pteranodon figure, but this one I believe is from the Amber collection. So it's got rubbery wings and a whole lot more detail too. This is another huge Spinosaurus figure. This one has the green body with the light underbelly, but it's still got the red spine and the red detailing around its face too. In the back here, we've got a T-Rex figure with the camouflage coloring. That's pretty cool. And this T-Rex has two actions. You can pull up on its tail for a chomping action, or you can pull down on the tail for a roaring action. Here is a T-Rex figure from the first Jurassic World movie. It's got a rubbery tail and a chomping action when you lift up its body. Here's another T-Rex figure with the gray and brown coloring on its body. It's very adjustable with its neck and its legs and its arms, and there's the button at the top of its head for chomping and roaring. This is a Carcharodontosaurus figure with the blue coloring on the sides and the brighter detailing along its back. And it's got an action button on its back for the chomping. Next is a Stegosaurus figure with the gray-blue body and the lighter underbelly. And this figure has an action button that when you press down right here, it swings its tail back and forth. Watch out for those spikes. This is an Allosaurus figure with a slide lever action on the top, so you can get a bunch of different sound effects and different roaring poses too. Here is a Suchomimus figure with a blue body and the yellow detailing along the top, and this figure has one action button for the chomping. Here's one of my favorite dinosaurs, the Carnotaurus. This figure has the red coloring on the side and the dark purple on top with an action button to activate the jaw and the neck. This, I believe, is another Sinoceratops figure. It's got the light green body with some yellow detailing on its tail and on the front as well. And when you press down on the back of this figure, it lifts its head up. This is another Allosaurus figure with different coloring. It's got the gray body with the yellow detailing. You can move all of its limbs, and it has an action button on its back to activate the jaw. This is a Ceratosaurus figure with the gray coloring on the bottom and some brown and red all the way up to the top of its face. Here is one of my largest Endoraptor figures. This figure has a few different actions. First, there's a button on its tail to activate the arms. You can use the tail to swivel the torso around, and there's a button on the bottom of the tail to activate the jaw. Next up, we've got a huge Dilophosaurus figure with the bright red coloring and the even brighter frills in the front. This is a pretty basic figure though, so you can't do too much with it. You can move the arms and legs and the tail a little bit. Here is the Iguanodon figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got the light tan body with some lighter striping along the top, and when you press down on this Iguanodon, it lifts its head up and down. Next up is a Cryolophosaurus figure. This figure has some darker coloring along its body. It's also got some brighter red detailing all the way up to the crown on the top of its head. And you can use the tail to swing the neck back and forth too. Way over here, I believe this dinosaur is called the Kentrosaurus. It looks kind of like a Stegosaurus, but it's got these huge spikes coming out of its side. And this figure has a slide lever action on its back to swing those spikes back and forth. Here is a Triceratops figure in the brown and blue coloring. Plus, you can use the tail on this dinosaur to control the neck. All right, we've got a Baryonyx figure in here. This one has the light brown and the dark gray blue coloring. And there's an action button on its back to activate its jaws. We've got another Baryonyx figure in here, but this one is super bright. It's got the bright green coloring along its side and bottom, and the brown along the top, plus that action button to activate its jaw too. Here's a pretty rare dinosaur. This is the Edmontosaurus. It's got some pretty cool coloring along its body, and you can use the tail to control the neck. Next up, we've got a Velociraptor from the Amber collection. This one is the bright orange and brown Velociraptor, and it is super posable. Here is an older Ankylosaurus figure. This one is actually a hybrid, and it has special armor plating that you can take on and off. Plus, it has an action button that when you move this leg, it swings its tail back and forth and moves its head too. I've got a few mini T-Rex figures in here. These are also older figures from the first Jurassic World movie. They're both pretty identical, but with different coloring, and they both have the action where you can move its jaw and its neck by moving the tail around. Looks like I've got some more Velociraptor figures in here. Check out this one. This one is dark blue, but it has the yellow and gold coloring along the top of its head. And I've also got these green Velociraptors too. This one is in the sneaking pose, and this one has some really cool detailing along the top of its body. These two figures are both Dilophosaurus figures. This one is the newer figure and is a bit smaller, but it does have an action button on its tail to activate the frills and open the jaw in the front, which is pretty cool. And this older Dilophosaurus figure, I believe from the first Jurassic World movie, it's a bit bigger, has battle damage on the side, and you can use the tail to move its neck. Here's another Stegosaurus figure. This one has the brown, tan, and green coloring, and it also has an action button that when you press down right here, it swings its tail back and forth. Looks like I've got 3 more Ankylosaurus figures. all with different coloring. This first one is brown and has the green and gray coloring on the top, plus with an action button to swing its tail. This next Ankylosaurus has the clay red underside with the tan and brown on top. And this third Ankylosaurus has the yellow coloring on the bottom with the green and gray on top, and a slide lever action to swing the tail back and forth. Here is another Dilophosaurus figure from the first Jurassic World movie, and this figure is super bright. Plus, it has the action on its tail to move its neck up and down. Here's another giant Stegosaurus figure. This one has a softer green-blue coloring, and it has the action button that you press down to swing its tail back and forth. Here's another Stegosaurus figure, but this one has the gray, brown, tan, and green coloring all over its body. And this one actually has two action buttons. The first one moves its head up and down, and the second one swings the tail back and forth. This is a Parasaurolophus figure with the light yellow coloring and the brown stripes, and it's got two action buttons. The first moves its head up and down, and the second swings its tail back and forth. We've got some more Velociraptor and Atrociraptor figures in here. First, we've got another Velociraptor blue figure. We've also got this purple and red Velociraptor. And we've got two Atrociraptor figures as well. We've got one that's tan and in the crawling pose, and we've got a bright orange-red one with the white striping. Next up, we've got a Sauropelta figure in the clay red color that can swing back and forth, so you better watch out for those spikes. We've also got this Moros Intrepidus figure with the light green coloring and the orange on its tail too. Here's another small Indominus Rex figure. This one also has the battle damage on its side, and you can use the tail to control its jaw and its neck too. This is another Stygimoloch figure. This one does not have any action buttons, but you can move its legs, its arms, and its head around too. And here is also another baby Brachiosaurus figure. This one, though, has the gray and purple coloring right along the top. And last of all is this Herrerasaurus figure with the dark blue coloring and the lighter detailing on its back and all the way up to its head, too.
Want to see more dino videos? Click the subscribe button now.